So, let's see what time it is. So let's go ahead. I'm going to stop the screen share so we can see everybody. And tonight, Erin is our special guest, talking about all different kinds of modalities for healing and for all the other things. She's multi-talented. She knows a lot. And so, Erin, could you start with maybe just a little bit of history about what you did earlier in your life and what you're doing now, and maybe how that led you to do what you're doing now?
Sure. I can give you a brief background. Uh, there wasn't really sort of any defining moment to have me go into healing or anything. I've always my entire life had experiences of, I guess, what people would call paranormal, spiritual. So I just sort of grew up with it, and obviously, unless you were someone who came from a family who did something like that professionally, in the 70s, 80s, that wasn't really something that you decided to do as a profession. It just wasn't on the radar. And I didn't really have anyone in my family who acknowledged or had any, spiritual gifts. And if they did, they didn't really know what to do with it or any of the rest of it. I mean, the most that anyone ever talked about was my great grandmother used to read tea leaves. And that was pretty much to the extent that, anybody really talked about anything paranormal outside of traditional religion. And so I I developed a really strong background in sciences and maths and stuff, and so that's basically where most of my formal education was, for the most part. I did a lot of schooling and have master's degrees, and I'd use that to work for the LAPD in their crime lab for 9 years. I was there doing crime scenes. Serology was my specialty, and I basically set up the DNA lab that they have there. And so that was what I did for all of the 90s and everything that was associated with the 90s in LA. And so I kind of got tired of the politics that was there, and I'm not the kind of a person that sort of fits in a box anyways. And so I was looking for something different. Plus, I was kind of getting a bleed through in my spiritual gifts, where I had kind of shut them down for when I was doing work with the crime scenes and such, and they were starting to sort of make their way through. So I more sort of just did it for my own development, as to figure out what this was and how to control it. And so I took a lot of classes. There were programs that I went through that people spent years doing, and I did them like in a year, just to get through and to figure out what I was doing. But everything, I don't want to make it sound simplistic, but for me, it was very easy. Most anything that anybody talks about doing, now whether I do it specifically to how they've defined it in, their terms of you do A, B, C, D for a particular thing. For myself, it just came easily and naturally for me. I didn't really have to, as long as I kind of knew what it was, I could do it. All I had to do was just sort of, set the intention, and a lot of it just came without me even asking for it. So, things like channeling and things like that, I didn't really have to be taught. And so it was sort of a natural progression. Once I left that, I was still doing some teaching for the police department for the state of California, and was sort of in transition and started taking care of my grandmother. And then I had more time to really just sort of devote to my own spiritual gifts. And so just sort of off and on between that, my grandmother passed, and then I was taking care of my mom up until 2 years ago when she passed. I really just sort of off and on was doing spiritual development and doing healing and readings and all of that sort of thing, as people asked me, or I saw an opportunity that that there was a space for me to do it professionally. So it really wasn't until probably the last couple of years that I looked at it as sort of more or less a full-time job. But even then, it doesn't fit in that box for me because I don't do things in a box. So that's the long and short of my background and how I got here.
So we can't even say you need a bigger box. You just need no box.
Right.
So, how did you happen upon divine empowerment healing? Because it seems like that is one of your main uh, uh, methodologies that you're using in healing.
Right. That's primarily my focus right now. I actually came upon it um, about a year and a half ago, and it was it was something that interested me, and it's one of those things where it you sort of get you feel a resonance to it, and so I looked further into it and started doing the classes, and once I did. And one of the things that was really easy about it is the classes are online, so you can take them whenever you want to because the energy is still there and the activations that are used with the different levels are still viable, whether it's online or not, and they're recorded, so you do it at your own pace. And so that really appealed to me, and I started doing them. And what I realized is that it was sort of the amalgamation of what I had been looking for and trying to do on my own with all the previous modalities I had learned, of trying to find where they all fit to sort of to join them together and make it more into what was needed. And with this particular modality, it actually sort of cuts through all that and gets you to that point of doing the methodologies that everyone's sort of like reaching to with all the other methodologies, if that makes it. It's kind of hard to explain because because energy healing is such a nebulous thing to begin with.
Right. So on a broad level, how would you explain or describe divine empowerment healing?
Okay, so what it does is it focuses in on the emotions that are the cause for whatever you're feeling physically, or the sort of emotional loop that you get caught in, such as grief, where something happens traumatic and you have this grief and you can't get out past it. It just keeps coming back to that, and you're never like moving out of it. I know that traditional psychology says you have 5 steps or 7 steps or whatever it is, but there's a lot of people that get caught at one of those steps, if that in fact is all the steps that they go through. But they get caught at those steps, and nobody really has a good answer for getting them through there and out to the other end of it. And so what it kind of has not really a basis, but a similarity to what oh God, I can't remember her first name now. Louise Hayes, what she did with like her little mini book of emotions that are the reason for your having a particular illness, and then she would come up with affirmations. Well, with divine empowerment, what you do is essentially you find the emotion that is the trauma that you've held in your body, because if you don't deal with it, you actually kind of treat your body as a backpack, and you find a pocket to stick it in, and you just forget about it. And every time that you have that emotional trauma and you don't deal with it, then you put more into that pocket. And when you start to get a physical illness, that's because it's built up to such a level that it's sort of putting out a neon sign for you and saying, you need to look at this because you've been doing this over and over and you're not looking at it, and the pocket's getting too full. And so with divine empowerment, what we do is we focus on that particular emotion that is what you either it's an emotion that that you have, or we've got a way of looking at it based upon the physical illness. So you focus on that particular emotion, And then we as a practitioner have the ability to go in and simply clear that emotion out of your physical body. And one of the techniques that we use is the states of matter. So for instance, when you have a thought or an emotion, that's a gas stage. And when you put it into your body as something that you're going to store and keep with you, it's a closed environment. So every time that you have those emotions and you don't deal with them, you keep putting more and more into a closed space to where eventually that gas will turn into a liquid. And the more and more that you keep doing that and not dealing with it, that liquid will actually turn into a solid, which then becomes a tumor and something that's immovable. When it's in a liquid stage, a lot of times things like fibromyalgia, people will tell you that they have an ache and a pain, but they can't point to where it is because it moves all the time. That's because it's in a liquid stage. It hasn't, when it progresses to a solid stage, then it's actually called a different disease, depending upon where it is and how it's affecting you. And so part of the process with the clearing, with the divine empowerment, is that we actually reverse those stages. So if it's in a liquid stage, then we reverse that back to a gas stage so it can leave your body more easily. Although there are some people, if they've done their own work and they're really ready to release those emotions, a lot of them will do it directly in a liquid form, such as tears. Um, so that's basically what we do with the divine empowerment, is that we're actually reversing the process that we unconsciously do when we don't deal with emotions or traumas.
So it's not necessarily just dealing with the subconscious, but rather the energetic.
Oh, no, no. And in fact, there's a lot of people that think that because we're focusing on the emotion, that they have to go through every scenario that they can think of that was the cause for that. Every time that in their memory that they had, for instance, grief, every time they either lost their pet or a family member died. And it's like, no, because that actually more solidifies it in your body. All I need is for somebody to focus in on the emotion, not be concerned about any of the scenarios, anything that was the cause of that emotion. And then that's what I clear, because they're kind of fighting me if they're getting caught in the scenarios.
So it sounds like, so you take it when it's really like if it's solidified, you're able to transform it to liquid and then gas so it can leave. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. When it gets to the solid stage, it may take more work because there's more layers to it. A lot of it depends upon how much work they've done themselves and how ready they're actually ready to just release those and not hold on to old stuff.
So is there a way to help them want to release that or to release that? Because a lot of times I think people know what they need to change. They know how they have to do it, but they're not doing it because somehow their motivation is stuck, or their willingness, or maybe a fear of change or something.
Yeah, I come across that a lot of times in the way that I kind of describe it and the way that I sort of feel and see it when I'm working with them is when I'm doing a clearing on a particular emotion, I can feel when there's a resistance. And a lot of times it will just, pop into my head as to like what it's associated with, because it's sort of like roots where they get tangled up with, two plants, then their roots kind of get tangled up, and the sort of secondary emotional connection is sort of holding the first one in place and not letting it fully release. And typically what I will do is, because it kind of goes in stages, even within one session of, we spend a few minutes doing a layer, or depending upon how much that they need to release, because it's all kind of like an onion. It goes in layers. Some people are ready to release, the majority of the layers in one time and one go. Other people, you have to do it layer by layer by layer, just because that's what they're comfortable with. But back to your question of when there's something else, is when I know what that other one is, and if I don't, I just question them, and usually we can figure it out. But what it is that I bring up to them sort of why they may be holding on to it. So for instance, if there's if say we're releasing betrayal and there's a reluctance there, I find a lot of times people are reluctant to release that because they think that in some way, if they're doing that, they're telling the other person it's okay because they're not still mad or they're not still reacting to it. A lot of times it's that especially with grief, they'll be reluctant to release grief because they think that if they're not feeling grief, then they're not honoring that person or they're not remembering them. You know, there's a lot of things that they tie in with these other things that are sort of they just go along with it without really thinking how logical it is. Um, and when these emotions are released and even traumas, you don't lose the memories. You just simply lose the emotional trigger to it. So for instance, it's if you had, you know, a situation where there was betrayal, you could look at that situation after the release and it would be almost like looking at a picture of somebody else. It's like, okay, you know, I could see that they're there, and you just go on to something else. You're not like immediately triggered and in that situation and having all the emotions. That part of it's gone. You don't have that anchor anymore.
So have you found it to be very effective, like with the people you've worked with? Are you
Oh
seeing,
yeah, very, very effective.
can you give us like without saying any names, can you give us maybe a few case studies kind of thing?
Sure. I had one gentleman that I was working with who he had a lot of issues in his childhood where his chest was either like physically constrained or he was made to feel like he couldn't breathe. And it actually developed into asthma later as he was like a teenager. And so he always believed that he had asthma because of like a genetic thing. And when we went through and actually dealt with the emotions for the asthma, because a lot of times I will get images and information as I'm doing the releasing too, is that it was actually related to a past life. He had I mean during the whole process I saw and felt this huge brown cloud come up out of my chest, um, and knew immediately that he had died in a previous life of mustard gas. And it was he had never released that because it was so traumatic and it happened so fast. He carried it over. And all of these things that he had happened to him as a child with the constricting of the breath were sort of cues in, you know, trying to get him to deal with it. And he didn't until it actually turned into asthma. And that kind of shows how if you aren't taking the cues that your body is telling you, and it's difficult because we don't really know, we don't have a language for what the body is telling us in most cases.
Mhm.
So, you know, when it keeps this neon sign going, you know, with his chest and saying, you know, you need to look at this, he didn't know what it was. It was just something else to kind of ignore.
That's amazing. And then after that, he was able to breathe okay after you went
Oh
through.
yeah, yeah. He felt completely different. Yeah.
How many sessions did you do with him?
I did 2 or 3 different sessions for him, but the specific part of asthma, that was in, you know, less than one session.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that would be a connection from past life. Do you ever find that there's some ancestral or, past generational kind of things that,
Sure, there's a lot of times that that kind of stuff will come up because when I have them focus on a particular emotion, what I tell them is that, you know, depending upon if they're visual or not, they may or may not see you know, pictures of scenarios come up, and I tell them just to look at it like you're looking at a scrapbook. Just
Mhm.
acknowledge whatever it is and turn the page and go to whatever the next one is. And a lot of times they may see things that are from this life that they didn't even realize had caused anything for them, but that they're still carrying. But then they also may get images of something that they have no idea what it is because it's from other lives. And it's things that they've brought in there in with them.
So Um, well, before we go on to her other healing and readings and stuff, David or Chris, do you have any questions or anything you're wondering about from what she said so far?
Not
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
not right at the moment. I'm unraveling what she's saying. Yeah, I'm still kind of I'm very interested. Thank you for your taking the time, Erin. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
So, do you do past life regressions, and are you trained in hypnotherapy?
I'm not trained in hypnotherapy. I have done my own personal past life regressions, and I have been trained in techniques that don't necessarily like hypnosis, but doing sort of more formal meditation type, looking at your past lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of psychics that can go into past lives without doing,
Sure.
hypnotherapy. But
Yeah.
usually, if you're going to do a past life regression, that's generally implies some sort of hypnosis when you're doing a regression because you're going back in time. So they normally use sort of a hypnotic technique. Whereas if you're a psychic and you're holding someone's hand and say, okay, I see a past life that you had, 1,000 years ago. That's different, where you see someone's past lives. But yeah, I'm just saying if you're going to do a regression, generally what I've only been taught to do it through a sort of a hypnotherapy type way.
I would, right. I would agree with you that when people talk about past life regression, that sort of denotes that it is going to be hypnotic. I have had certain techniques where I've been able to access things and done it for others of doing it through a meditation. You're not necessarily doing it as extensive as you would with past life regression. However, like as I said in the beginning, I don't necessarily do things the way other people do, and it's very easy for me to get into that. It just doesn't happen to be something that is a big interest for me. Even when I do the regressions, have someone else lead me through the regression for myself. I'm very quick with it. I mean, I get all of the information I need within just a couple of minutes. I'm not interested in, looking around and gee, where was this and what was I just want the information of, what did I learn there? And, I get the snapshot of all the information of like, what I was, where it was, and my, the occupation or, whatever it was that I was doing. I pretty much get all that as soon as I'm there.
Right.
So I don't need to necessarily spend a lot of time for myself. I know a lot of people are interested in that kind of thing, but that's not something that I do for a lot of people. It has to be something particularly special for me to actually agree to help someone to look at that, and then it's more sort of in a meditation rather than actual past life regression with hypnosis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So, as I understand it, you're going to be teaching some classes at Mystic Caverns about different modalities. Can you talk a little bit about those, what they are, and a brief kind of explanation?
Sure. I'm going to those classes. I've labeled it Healing 101, and it's because it really is just sort of the basics. There's a lot of people that think that they have to have like some epiphany or somebody, oh, you're a healer for them to actually go and do it. And I sort of wanted people to know that a lot of things that they do or think is just normal for them, they may actually be doing some actual energy healing without labeling it as such. I've taken a lot of classes in different types of healing. Some of them I kind of use bits and pieces whenever I need them. It's just the initial class, what I have set up is basically just doing real basic energy healing of feeling other people's energy, any information that you might get from it, how to sort of balance it, or I guess the better term would be basically to feel it flowing, to get, if you feel a blockage, to help it to flow better, that sort of a thing is and it's probably one of the first that I learned. And so and there's lots of times that I use that just as a boost to whatever else I'm doing. I find it very helpful, and a lot of people, like I say, may be doing it on their own and not really realizing that's what they're doing. So that's part of the introduction. A lot of it is just, yeah, it's bits and pieces of different things. I'm trying not to pack too much in it, because I want to allow time for people to try it themselves. I don't want it to just be something that, I'm up there and talking to them and they don't get a chance to actually feel or do it. Because I want them to be able to take that away with them as well. And then one of the classes I'm gonna be doing the light and sound healing technique that I do. I'm gonna allow them to experience it, but it won't be really what a full session would be, because you need the person to be experiencing that for a full hour on their own. But I want them to know what it is, so it's not like something mysterious when someone says color and sound healing. They don't have any idea what it entails, because it's something that's been used, for thousands of years. I mean, if not millions. So I mean, it's something, and I think it's something that's becoming much more prevalent in our world right now too. There's more people that are coming up with various different they call them different techniques, but I think essentially they're doing the same thing. They're using the frequencies. So yeah, I wanted to have some exposure of that. Yeah, so it's just sort of a hodgepodge of all the different things that I think that people would be interested in, and that are quick and easy to show people in the amount of time and have them experience it.
You also bring in like the aura and the chakras as a
Mhm.
part of some of those healing modalities.
Sure. Yeah. 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 I will talk about all of that. I don't necessarily concentrate specifically on chakras that much anymore. I think especially recently we're finding that chakras are a nice way of sort of pinpointing an area on the body or in part of the energetic body. But I'm finding that in the past, they've sort of been, getting back to that box analogy, they've sort of been in a box to where, okay, if you have, your heart chakra is exactly here, and it's exactly this color, and it's doing exactly this. And I find that that's not true the more that you actually look at it and don't expect what to find. And I don't think that they're necessarily in that box anymore. I think that's my opinion, is that was more sort of a control mechanism to keep us from our full light body, where the chakras are integrated and they flow within each other, and that they're not restricted to one specific area and just do one specific thing. So I'm much more into a holistic system, to where you're using everything.
That's what it sounds like. Now, you also do readings, so tell us what kind of readings you do and anything else you want to share about that.
Sure, I do. I do some not necessarily tarot cards. I have a couple of decks of tarot, but for the most part, if I'm doing readings with cards, it's typically oracle cards, and I'm usually picking one or two cards just as sort of a prompt, or to give the other, the person that I'm doing the reading for, something that is informative to them, because a lot of people expect that they're going to be cards and so forth. And so I sort of use them as a tool and just sort of a prompt for myself. But I mostly do psychic readings, and I kind of hate to keep saying this, but I don't put myself in a box. Whatever anybody needs, if I can provide that, then that's what I will do. If they want to know, you know, what is going on with, you know, their job or whatever, then I look at that. If they want to look broader, then I do that. You know, and I've also done body scan you know, healing as well as readings for people. The one thing that I don't do those very much for people, it's sort of a special request because it takes a long time for me to go through, because I literally go through every system of the body and find out what's going on with it. And that takes a long time. And then the additional time of actually sitting down with the client and going through every single aspect of that. I found that for most people, it's too in depth and they don't like somebody knowing that much about them. And so you know, not only is it you know, a lot of time that is spent, but how deep it goes, most people are just, they don't really want that. So that's not something I do a lot of. But if somebody is, you know, has a particular thing that they want me to look at, then I will certainly, you know, scan that and see what's going on with it and give them my opinion on what's happening and what they can do to better it.
Now, I said you're very multi-talented. So the other thing that you're going to be doing at Mystic Caverns is seances. And I know that you're also a medium, so give us a little explainer about that.
Yeah, I have to thank David for starting that. He asked me if I wanted to participate in that, and that was kind of something that I'd been thinking about for a while. So I started doing that with him at Mystic Cavern, and I've just sort of continued it. I don't necessarily, I guess I probably wouldn't necessarily call it quote unquote seance, because a lot of people have preconceived ideas as to what that is, but the label is kind of stuck with what I'm doing there. It's more it's, I have to, how to say this. I don't necessarily see like a lineup of spirits like some people who do readings like that. It's more that I feel their energy, and then once I put my attention onto their energy, then I get the information as to who they're here for and why and so forth, and get the information. So I think that probably if I had to really pinpoint it, I would probably say it's more of doing mediumship, of connecting with each person and whichever you know, spirit or energy is coming with them to give them messages. And yeah, it's something that's kind of fun for me because it's different than a lot of the other stuff that I do. And I meet a lot of different kinds of people than what I do through the rest of the stuff that I do. And so yeah, I never know what's going to come through or what kind of information, but there's been a lot of positive feedback about it. So yeah.
So how would, if someone asked you, what is the difference between being psychic and being a medium? What would you say? I'm putting you on the spot.
I guess if I had to come up with a definition for that, because I kind of go back and forth on that too. I guess I would say that if you're psychic, then you're receiving information. If you're a medium, you're able to sort of, I guess, have the conversation. So there's a back and forth versus just receiving.
Would you say it's also a matter of contacting someone who's already passed over as a medium more so than as a psychic? Or do you think that psychics also tune into those who pass?
I think it's really just a matter of semantics and what your preferred term, you know, or title would be. I don't know that there's really a hard and fast line between them. You know, I think a lot of it just sort of depends on where you're from as to what term is used more. You know, kind of like the difference between, is it soda or is it pop, you know?
Yep. I'm from Ohio, it's pop. So, does anybody else have any questions? Anything you're wondering about, anything that she said, or anything else you'd like to know?
Yeah, I think you're right about the idea of it depends on where you're from or what discipline you follow. Um, I know that for a lot of people, they think of a medium as someone who goes into a trance sort of thing.
Right.
It's sort of a trance channel, um, where the spirit can sort of speak through them. But it really just gets into the fact of whether you're in a trance or you're conscious, and you're doing it consciously.
Right.
So you do the same thing. You're still letting them sort of speak through you, but you're just awake.
Right.
You're
Then there
conscious and awake.
again, right. And there again, you also have sort of a non-defining line between what's a medium and what's a channeler, because, a lot of the things you're doing that are similar. So, yeah, I think a lot of it is just semantics and what the preferred term is and what somebody individually has as a definition for what that is for themselves. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
What do you see for yourself for the future? What do you see as yourself going
Yeah,
down
give
the road?
yourself a
Do you have
reading.
any plans for the next 5 years or 10 years or something?
I see myself continuing with the divine empowerment healing, definitely, because it's evolving literally every day, and going deeper and getting into different levels. Um, but for myself personally, also, I never I do a lot of different things, and I don't necessarily do them like I don't do anything like as a career. It just whatever is my interest at that particular time is what I do. So there could be something that I'm not seeing that is coming up for me that will take me in a different direction, and I'm fine with that. I enjoy the healing that I do and the interaction. I do a lot of helping people with where they're going and developing their own spiritual gifts, which I enjoy a lot because unfortunately with things like YouTube, a lot of people are sort of seeing what they can do with it and are not taking the initial steps and just sort of they're jumping in the deep end. So in fact, I've got somebody right now that I'm dealing with who went from basically a sitting, position to running and had a lot of fallout from it. And now I'm having to take him back to learn how to crawl and walk so that he's got all of those steps in between to get himself in a better position that if he wants to run later, then he's prepared for it and is not going to have any of the pitfalls that are associated with that. So I'm enjoying doing that. Uh, to be really honest, what I've found with the changes, just not even with my clients, but just even in my own life, I really see that in the future, divine empowerment, energy healing is actually going to be kind of taught to most people, just like meditation is now, because I find it so effective because once you know how to do it and you have the energy levels to do it on yourself or anyone else, anytime that something comes up in your life, rather than sort of carrying it and deciding if you're going to do something with it or forgetting about it or whatever, as soon as it happens, you clear it right then and there, and you're not carrying any of that, and it's not affecting any other part of your life. And so that's really what I've come to see as the value of it, and that I really think is the potential for it in the future, is that it's going to be basically the same as people being taught meditation and then being taught to clear their own energies so that they're not having any health issues or emotional traumas that they're just carrying around and getting worse as they age and don't want to look at them.
So that was my next question: is that the divine empowerment, you can do it yourself. You don't have to have someone working on you.
No, you do it on yourself. I do it
Yeah.
on myself every day. Whether and it's very much like most other healing modalities, that when you're working on someone else, you're getting the benefit out of it too. So, it's helping to release things within you as well as the person that you're working on. But by no means do you need to have anyone that you're working on to have the benefit from it.
So I was wondering also, so if someone came to you, you do so many different things, but they didn't necessarily know what they needed from you, I guess you could tune in and see whether they needed a reading or healing or one thing or another.
Sure, I have sort of the basics listed on my website. I have like the divine empowerment energy healing. I have the light and sound healing, then the energized cellular regeneration, and then I have readings. And then I also have a separate one for just a consultation, and that's for if someone like wants to develop their abilities or something like that, just wants to get clarification as to what they're going through, that kind of thing. And so I let them book, whichever it is that they want to. And in reality, whatever that they need during that session is what we deal with. So, and it's the same thing with any of the healing sessions. It's not strictly relegated to just doing the energy work. I may also need to do some discussing with them as to where they are in their life and so forth. And then it also, I may get some information from either earlier in this life or past life, and they start talking about, how, yeah, I knew about that and it's affecting me this way. And so we may go into that. I pretty much just let them lead wherever they need to be in that session. I'm not one of, obviously I don't feel myself in a box, and I don't put anyone else in a box either. So whatever that they need, I'm perfectly willing to do. And if it's something that I don't have any experience with and I can't help them with, I'm more than happy to tell them that, you need to be looking for someone else that specializes in this, because this isn't something that I'm familiar with enough to guide you at this point.
Aside from the healing class, have you, do you do like spiritual development classes or something along those lines?
I haven't as yet. I'm kind of seeing sort of what happens with these healing classes. There's actually 3 classes for the healing 101. It's going to be not tomorrow night. Let's see. Yeah, tomorrow night it's the first one. And then it's going to be the next 2 Thursday nights as well. And each one is kind of independent. They're standalone. So if someone wants to come for just one, that's fine. If they want to come for all 3, then that's fine. It doesn't make any difference. And sort of based upon what happens there, and I'm going to be asking the people who are there as well, what they would like to see. I'll probably sort of tailor the next classes as to what, they're interested in looking at and dealing with. If people want to do spiritual development, then yeah, I'm more than happy to do some classes on that.
So, well, we've got you here. I know you're doing a lot of things at Mystic Cavern, which is on in Tucson on 22nd Street, just a little bit south of Kolb. And do you want to give us a rundown of what you're offering there at this point?
Sure, yeah. Most Saturdays, not every Saturday, because there's sometimes I have a conflict, but most Saturdays I'm there for the entire time that they're open, doing mini readings or mini healings. A lot of times it's a little bit of each in the session, just depending upon what they need. So I do those. They're 20-minute sessions. 20 to 30 minutes is usually kind of what it ends up being, but I'm there the entire time on Saturdays. On the second Saturday, I believe it is. Now that you're asking me, I need to look at my calendar. It's the second Saturday, I believe, that I do the seance, and that's starting at 7, I believe. Yeah. So it's 7 o'clock on Saturday, the second Saturday of every month. I do the seance, And then on Thursdays, like I said, tomorrow night as well as the next 2 Thursday nights is going to be the Healing 101 class. Trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah. Wait a minute. The let's see, no, fourth Saturday of every month is the metaphysical fair that Mystic Cavern puts on, and I typically will have a table there as a vendor, again doing many readings and healings for anybody that would like to come by. So, and there's a lot to choose from.
Where's the first place you said you're at? Where's the first place you mentioned? Place you said
They're
you're
each
using?
at Mystic Cavern. They're each at Mystic Cavern, and the first thing that I was talking about is on most Saturdays I'm at Mystic Cavern during the day. They're open from 10 until 6 on Saturdays, so I'm there for most of the time doing many
Okay.
readings and healings. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
And now if somebody didn't get all that, they can certainly send you an email and find out more details. And
Absolutely. Yeah. And Mystic Cavern has a newsletter that they put out, and it has it all on there as well. So, or you can even call Mystic Cavern and they will let you know if I'm there or not.
very good. So anybody have anything else? Last words?
I did want to touch just for a couple minutes here on the energetic cellular regeneration that I do. It's part of the divine empowerment energy healing, but it's actually something that's sort of a standalone on its own. It's not necessarily included in the, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's not included in the typical divine empowerment healing where you're doing the emotions. What it actually entails is what I do for you is I boost up your cellular energy, the voltage in your cells, very similar to the boost that people get when they do something like stem cell therapy. However, with stem cell therapy, you're introducing something foreign into the body that already has highly energized cells. Typically, they're, fetal cells, and that's sort of when we have our highest voltage is during conception. You have like the highest voltage. It starts to decrease, and then when you are born, it's around 170, I want to say. I think it's 170 millivolts, and it continually decreases throughout your life depending upon how ill you are or if you maintain your health, and a lot of things that you're doing to and putting into your body will determine how fast that decreases. And with the energetic cellular regeneration, what I'm doing is I'm actually boosting up your energy back up high. And it takes a little bit for it to absorb, but most people that I've done it for, they feel a surge of energy pretty much immediately. And it will kind of trickle in, depending upon what sort of health issues that you're dealing with, will depend upon how big of a boost that you feel. Somebody who is like, say, in their 30s or 40s and don't really have any health issues, they've actually reported feeling like their age is going backwards, that they're feeling, that they're like 5 years, have that energy of being 5 years younger, and don't get sore when they go and work out, all sorts of things. Other people that have illnesses, it's not as dramatic for them because it will go to where you need the energy the most. So say, for instance, you have a broken arm. Then when you get the cellular regeneration energy, it will mostly go to that area where you need to have repair. So you may not feel it as much or as dramatically in the rest of your body, even though your whole body is being flooded with more energy. And unlike doing something like stem cell therapy, where it is basically consumed by the body, and you have to do it over and over, and Most cases it's gone within, 3 to 6 months, the effects of it, and they have to redo it. We're finding that this is lasting years for most people. And so it's something that I like to touch on, because a lot of people are obviously interested in feeling better. For myself, I find that I don't have any aches and pains anymore. So it used to be that I had some health issues, and for me to get down on my knees and get back up, I mean, I could do it, but I would feel sore for the next couple of days. I can do that now, and I'm not sore getting down, I'm not sore getting up, and I certainly don't feel it even the next day. I mean, that is just gone for me. And I had actually been diagnosed about 8 years ago with MS, and the biggest symptom that I had for it was I would get just wiped out of my energy. So for instance, fatigue would be the biggest problem for me. I could, in the summer, especially when we have the heat, I could open up the door, take a step outside, hit the heat, and I would literally be done for the rest of the day. I would have to go back inside and just rest and, try the next day. This entire summer, this last summer, I didn't even have one day that was like that. And I was outside doing things in the summer. So, just for even myself, I've found that it's made a huge difference.
Have you ever thought of opening up a clinic?
I have, but again, it's not for everybody. A lot of people say that they want it, but they don't. They're interested in doing it, but then they don't want to really change anything that brought what it is that they're dealing with right now. So, I've had it out there, and I've had, a few people who have been interested and have gone ahead and done it, and they've been really happy with the results. And I tell a lot of people about it, but actually having people do it is another thing. So, you can lead them to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right. That's wonderful. So David and Chris, I'll ask again, anything you want to ask or add to the conversation?
No, I'm good. I am thinking about a lot of different things, a lot of things I've done in my life, a lot of things and things that are to come. So, but Erin, you gave me plenty to think about, and thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Just for the energetic cellular regeneration, is that sort of a hands-on type thing? I mean, is it similar where you're just with a client and you're just putting the energy into you? Are you putting your energy into them, or you're getting the energy from somewhere else?
All of the techniques that I do, especially anything related to divine empowerment energy, is if there's any energy that's put into someone, it's using the divine energy. It's not mine. It's more channeling the divine
Okay.
energy
So again,
into them.
you're still just you're channeling the energy through you.
Well, yeah, and I don't even sort of, because I have done that before with previous types of energy and of healing, and I can see and feel the energy channeling, and it's I'm glad you asked this question, because I never really sort of looked at it this way, and I don't, the energy doesn't even channel through me. It's more like I simply direct what the divine energy is going to do. I sort of tell it what the necessity is, and call it in and allow it to do the work.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the question.
That's good. On another different kind of level of this, how do you define divine?
I don't really, again, I don't really give it a name. I mean, that's sort of trademarked as to what it needs to be called. For me, I basically tell anybody that I'm working with, it's whatever you consider is the creator, source, God, whatever, term you want to put on it, whatever you're comfortable with. My feeling is that it's all looking at the same thing, just giving it different names.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much, Erin. And next week I will be presenting on the My Mystic Message Planner and other things related to that. And this recording will be available on our blog at awakenanddiscover.com. And just as a reminder, this is a venture between Awaken and Discover and the Tucson Paranormal Society. So thank you very much for your presentation, Erin, and for everybody else for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I